It's time to kick off Group D. Both players starting fresh 0-0, and I'm very pleased to bring them out. Our first competitor from Japan is one of the players who qualified as top 8 on the MTGA ladder. Let's give a warm welcome to Taiju Sugiyama. Remarkably enough, Taiju notes that he prefers to play casual commander. But once again, top 8 on MTGA is no easy feat. Taiju will be playing Jund Warriors and red-black aggro. His opponent from the United States, you may know him by his streamer ID, NumotTheNummy, one of the most popular MTGA streamers out there. Let's give a welcome to Kenji Egashira. Kenji likes a fast, loose, aggressive play style, bringing the mono-white aggro, which has been one of the strongest in this entire tournament, but also an unusual Sultai Explorer. Yes, nice. Very off-meta picks in this match. I'm excited to get it underway. Gentlemen, good luck. Have fun. You may head to your stations. Let's head over to the casters for the next match.
Thank you very much, Sean. Indeed, we have 4 different decks to look forward to in this matchup. Sultai, Mono White, Jund Warriors, and Red Black Aggro. 3 of these decks we haven't seen very much of so far in this tournament.
Yeah, that's the one thing I'm really interested to see, going into this. Taking a look at Adver's list here, we have not just red, not the mono red, not red green, but Jund Warriors. So still playing Goblin Chainwhirler, but really pushing its mana base to the limits on the back of unclaimed territory. Splashing green for Crawl Harpooner, Grow Chamber Guardian, and Grow Spellbreaker, but also has access to a few black spells in Carnival Carnage and Status Statue. Now that interaction is going to be extremely powerful if you can pull it off. Goblin Chainwhirler plus Status Statue, if you can resolve that, means your opponent's entire board will be eliminated because Goblin Chainwhirler, when it enters a battlefield, will have Death Touch and then killing all the creatures.
Taking a look at the sideboard here, we see the Immortal Sun, one-ofs in each of these cards. Again, this is for the Direfleet Daredevil interaction with a potential Mastermind's acquisition. So no actual way to access the sideboard, correct?
Yes, this no way to access the sideboard. It doesn't play Mastermind's acquisition. Again, this is a concession to the fact that this player is expecting players to play Mastermind's acquisition, but that's not something that he's going to really have to keep in mind for this matchup because Numot is not playing Mastermind's acquisition in either of his decks.
All right, taking a look at the red-black aggro. Looks very much like a mono-red deck, but just splashing for the Carnival Carnage, it looks like?
Yes, so splashing, doing a light splash here for both Carnival Carnage and Rixmati Reveler. And the great thing about this splash is that both cards you can still play even if you don't have access to black mana. Rixmati Reveler is still a fine option to play in turn 2. It's still a 2-drop. It lets you filter through your bad cards. And on top of that, Carnival is just a fantastic card in the meta because there's a lot of aggressive decks in the format. So if you play against the White Weenie deck, if you play against a mono-red aggressive deck, Carnival will often be able to have a valid target. And even if you play against control matchups where that effect isn't very good, you still have access to Carnage, where the discard 2 and deal 3 damage effect is actually quite powerful.
Pretty good. And I see the Legion War Boss too, so that makes me a very happy camper. Taking a look now at the mono-white aggro from Numot. Got 3 copies of Trusty Rusty in there. That we haven't seen very often.
Yeah, the Rustwing Falcon is a very nice way to try to play around all the Goblin Chainwhirlers that you expect coming into this tournament. If you look, Kenji has lots of very resilient creatures against specifically Goblin Chainwhirler. You see Hunted Witness, which does survive because it does create that 1/1 token. On top of that, Rustwing Falcon is actually just a very solid creature. And the only thing that you'd be concerned about coming into this tournament is, if you run into a deck full of Crawl Harpooners. But I think that's kind of underrepresented going into this tournament. So another just solid 1-mana option to play in the white aggressive deck.
And we have seen so far that evasive creatures with flying have given a few players the advantage in a few games.
And so and it looks like Kenji also accidentally bringing one of his best of 3 decks to the tournament. But, you got to do what you got to do. Numot actually playing the only Sultai Explorer deck in the entire tournament. Now, this is a deck that's one of the most popular decks in all of Standard in a best of 3 environment because it has a very highly customizable sideboard, allowing you to have basically good matchups after sideboard in a lot of decks. But Kenji just, is very well practiced with this deck and is saying, you know what, I don't care what people think. I'm going to bring this deck, I'm going to play my Wild Growth Walker package, get my value, and if I do happen to play against another mid-range deck, I have access to Hydrate Krasis, which allows me to go over the top of a lot of different strategies. One tech card that Kenji also has in his deck are those 3 copies of Negate, and that has to be a concession to all the control that he expects coming into this tournament.
Looking at the head-to-head here, Adver started playing 2015, not 2015. And NumotTheNummy started playing in 1998, so a little bit of a experience difference there, but in this format, anything goes. As we've seen, very unexpected players advancing to the top 16, and yeah, basically we'd have no idea what to expect here. In terms of the matchups, what do you think is the preferred matchup between all 4? Because obviously we will not see a mirror match.
Yeah, it's hard to get a beat on this matchup because we are just unfamiliar with a lot of these decks. But if you look at what Adver brought to the table, he basically brought 2 Chain Whirler decks to the table, right? You have, of course, Jund Warriors and Red-Black Aggro. So going into that, I think Kenji would rather be playing the Sultai Explore deck because we've seen that the mono-white deck will often struggle if they go up against a Goblin Chain Whirler.
Let's take a look at the opening hands now. For Numot, he's got 1 Plains in hand, a Dauntless Bodyguard, and no other 1-drops to help him out there. This looks like a mulligan to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I just don't think you can really afford to keep a 1-land hand on the play. You just only have that 1 opportunity to draw a land. And if you just don't draw a land next turn, the game is almost effectively over. One of the things that's really important as the mono-white deck is for you to be able to play multiple spells in 1 turn. And the deck is actually not that unreasonable at mulliganing.
Taking a look now at Adver's hand, a Blood Crypt and a Mountain in hand for him. Fanatical Firebrand gets a Lava Run, and this looks like a keepable hand, especially being on the draw. Yeah,
this hand is great. Not only does it have Fanatical Firebrand, which often will have a target against many of Numot's 1-mana creatures, he also has, of course, the most important card in the matchup in Goblin Chain Whirler. Also, he has 2 lands. He does need to find that 3rd land to find Goblin Chain Whirler, but he is playing Rixmati Reveler, which also allows him to filter through his cards to help him find whatever he might need for whatever matchup.
Now, what I quite like about the Rixmati Reveler, whereas a lot of other red spells will require you to discard a card in order to draw one, Rixmati Reveler will get you a card irrespective if you pay the spectacle cost. So you can have a completely empty hand and it'll still draw you 2 cards.
Yeah, that is one of the upsides of something like a Rixmati Reveler. If you have no cards in hand, you can draw a card. And what's really interesting about that card when we were designing this card in R&D was we saw that interaction. We were like, are we okay with this? If we're empty-handed, do we want to create a red creature that can just draw you a card for 2 mana? And ultimately we were like, it's probably upside. It's going to be fine. So we ultimately decided that you didn't actually have to discard a card to draw a card on the Reveler. Also, one of the few designs that is a monocolored card, but it has a multicolored spectacle cost. We basically wanted to do that so that, you know, you can consider playing this card in a monocolored deck, but truly be paid off for having access to black mana. And, you know, anytime you can spectacle that Rixmati Reveler with no cards in hand, you're just it's going to be really, really hard to lose those games because you're just going to be up so many cards.
So as we get ready here, friends, just a reminder that this is, of course, the biggest Magic the Gathering tournament to date. $1 million in prize pool money up for grabs. So it's all on the line here. This very first game in Group D is possibly the most stressful for all of these players.
Oh yeah, definitely. Everybody's got butterflies in their stomach. You always want to get that first win out of the way. And of course, it's also extremely valuable to win the first match and try to stay in the upper half of the bracket as much as possible, because if you win the first 2 matches, for example, then you only have to wait 1 more match and in order to advance to the top 16. However, if you lose your first round, you have to win 4 matches in a row to make it into that top 16. So you have to win an extra match if you lose round 1.
So all the players that have gone 3-0 so far, their days are done. They are relaxing, sitting back, watching the action, just like you were doing at home. And I hope you have been enjoying it so far, friends. I'm looking forward to this matchup. I'm looking forward to seeing 3 decks that we haven't really seen represented at the tournament so far. Yeah. So this should be good.
Yeah, one thing that I do want to note is, you know, we've had the narrative where, you know, the mono-red deck, you have the Chain Whirler, it is good against the white decks. But we've seen the white deck still be able to come out on top of these red strategies because the white deck is a bit more synergistic. You have cards that really work well together, and cards like Venerated Lockstone working really well with kind of the swarm strategy of the white aggressive decks. You have Legion's Landing, you flip one of those, that does a lot of work. You can play multiple spells in 1 turn with Conclave Tribunal on top of that. So, you know, despite there being highly effective cards in cards like Goblin Chain Whirler in the matchup, the white deck can still just come off really, really fast, and Venerated Lockstone can swing the matchup right on its head.
Definitely. Even having unbreakable formation as a just in case. Ideally, you want to be playing that in your main phase to get those counters on, make your creatures vigilant, and then use a convoke spell on them after the attack. So if you need to use it in response to a Goblin Chain Whirler, for example, then that's also in the toolbox there for the white deck.
Yeah, just having additional ways to just make sure that your creatures have more than one toughness is extremely important. And that's why you see the Rustwing Falcons in Kenji's deck, because, you know, 2 toughness, that's a pretty big game.
Yeah. And there aren't too many flyers either that we've seen in the decks that have been submitted.
Right,
Like,
yeah. And I think coming in, you know, I think the metagame of even best of one has kind of shifted over the past few weeks. I think earlier on, you know, especially with Autumn Burchett winning the Mythic Championship in Cleveland with Mono Blue, you saw a lot of Mono Blue even on best of one ranked ladder.
Oh, yeah.
And as a result, you saw a lot of people playing cards like Crawl Harpooner, which is just a very solid creature that you can play. But every time you play against a Mono Blue deck, you just do a little fist bump because you're going to be able to eat a creature for free. As a result, you're seeing less flyers.
Yeah.
You're seeing less Mono Blue. But then inverse to that, now you're seeing less Crawl Harpooners. In that world, maybe it's correct to play something like Rustwing Falcon again.
So while we wait for this game to get underway, looking forward to the second game. We will see Sultai versus the red-black aggro, am I correct? Or is it the Jund Warriors?
It'll be the Jund Warriors deck.
So that matchup will be quite interesting as well, especially because the Chain Whirler is not super effective against the Sultai creatures, but if the combination of the Goblin Chain Whirler and Status Statue hits the board, then that's in essence a Wrath. That's a sweeper. That's dead. Everything's gone.
Yeah, this is actually, I think, the ideal lineup that Adver wanted because he has 2 variants of Goblin Chain Whirler decks, but he wants the variant of Goblin Chain Whirler that actually gives him the possibility of killing giant Wild Growth Walkers or even something like a Carnage Tyrant. With that combination that you talked about, Goblin Chain Whirler plus status, targeting Goblin Chain Whirler, giving it Death Touch means that it'll enter the battlefield, deal 1 damage to all your opponent's creatures. Given that it has Death Touch, they'll all die.
All right, looks like the game is ready to get underway here. Numot Mela getting down to 6, still only finding the 1 planes, but an extra 1 drop. Is he contemplating keeping this?
Yeah, so things change much more once you go down to 6. You have to keep a lot more hands. This hand is still better than the previous hand because it does have an additional 1 drop, and you get a Scry, and he Scryed a land to the top.
Planes on the top there for Numot. So Sky March Aspirant starts things off. And a Mountain Fanatical Firebrand on the opposite side, staring down that Sky March Aspirant. Second planes off the top of the library there for Numot.
And Adver choosing not to use that Firebrand right away to kill the Sky Marcher Aspirant, just kind of looking to see if you can afford to maybe take a few damage and get some value with that Goblin Chain Whirler that he has in hand. That looks like that looks to be his game plan here.
Yeah, letting the 2 damage through. Trusty Rusty hits the board, as well as the second planes. Blood Crypt coming down now.
So the problem with this is it does leave you vulnerable to Venerated Loxodon. So now if Kenji draws a land, for example, he can then just play Venerated Loxodon, which is just a gigantic creature against the red deck. And this is exactly what's going to happen. Sure, Adver can use the Fanatical Firebrand to get that Sky Marcher Aspirant off the board, but had he used it earlier, Kenji would not have been able to play this Venerated Loxodon this turn.
Good points. Trusty Rusty now a bigger boy in the air. Going to be getting some good damage in there.
And look at this. Goblin Chain Whirler is not actually going to do anything here.
No.
It's just going to be a, 3 mana, 3/3 first strike, still a reasonable creature,
decent.
but it doesn't have that game-breaking effect that you've seen a lot of times in this matchup.
It's not going to win in a fight against a Venerated Loxodon without help, that's for sure.
Kenji's thinking, okay, you must have a shock. He's offering the trade here. It will be a 2-for-1, however. Kenji can choose to block, and if Adver uses a removal spell,
which he does, shocking the Venerated Loxodon and the trade between the 2 creatures.
Oh, and that was huge. That was a huge block from Kenji. The reason being, now Adver, if you look at his hand, he has both Light Up the Stage and Skewer the Critics. Wasn't able to cast any of the Spectacle cards in hand, and that's probably an additional reason why Kenji chose to block.
Yeah, you have to be so wary of Spectacle, because we've seen Spectacle cards get out of hand. 3 Skewer the Critics, being able to pay just 3 mana for 9 damage. Yeah, that's pretty good. Skewer the Critics now getting rid of the Rustwing Falcon.
Oh, and this is going to be a huge turn for for Numot here. He's going to play Snubhorn Sentry, Convoke out, and Venerated Loxodon. The absolute key to this matchup, if you draw Venerated Loxodon, you can still win any of these games. And look at this board. Kenji has 11 power on the board after Adver's used multiple removal spells to get these creatures off.
He's also one permanent from Ascending.
Yeah, on top of that, History Banali is about to go to Chapter 3, so he's potentially facing an attack for 15 next turn.
Oh. What does Adver do here? What is his out? He has the ability to light up the stage and Chain Whirler with the land in play. But
yeah, and this should basically just be the game at this point. I think this is just now a lethal attack.
Trusty Rusty will hit the board here. Making the Snubhorn Sentry. Oh, no, never mind. Not needed. Sorry, Trusty Rusty. You will be on the bench for this game, my friend. But maybe in game 3, we will get to see you again.
And
so,
you
swift.
Right, it was fast, and you kind of got to see Kenji really kind of tuning his deck so that he can play around Chain Whirler as much as possible with the Chain Whirler. But I think that the biggest moment of that match was Adver's maybe decision, and I'm not saying it was wrong or correct or incorrect, but it was the decision to not use that Fanatical Firebrand on that Sky Marcher Aspirant to try to make it so that his Chain Whirler could get additional value. But as a result, Kenji was able to convoke out Loxodons and just put way too much pressure on the battlefield, and he just fell way too behind on that match.
Yeah, definitely against the white deck, you want to try and remove as many creatures as possible due to the limited lands or the fewer lands that the deck plays. And yeah, just don't let the elephant hit the board, and most of the time you're all right.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what I've learned when I played that matchup against the Convoke deck. The best way to actually slow them down is if they offer you a trade with creatures, you take that trade. If you have a removal spell, use the removal spell, unless, of course, you're playing something like Esper Control, where you have access to cards like Kaya's Wrath to sweep the entire board.
So next up, we will be seeing the Sultai Explore versus the Jund Warriors, and this game could has the potential to be quite spicy. I'm hoping we will get to see the Chain Whirler status combo, because it's just so satisfying when that goes off. I've managed to do it once because I forgot to put a stop as I played my creature. But yeah, it's very satisfying.
So Numot is going to be very aware of this interaction. So one way, of course, to break apart this combo is using a removal spell in response to the status statue. And if Kenji does leave up an instant speed removal spell to kind of disrupt that combo, that is a pretty big blowout, because that's going to end up with Adver being down 2 cards to 1 in that exchange.
All right, so kicking things off now. Blood Crypt hits the board. Overgrown Tomb coming down for Numot.
So as you can see,
both entering tapped.
No Stomping Grounds, no green sources in Adver's hand, but he's got that unclaimed territory. That's what this deck was built around, to fully utilize the potential for unclaimed territory. By naming Warrior, Goblin Chain Whirler, Warrior, Growth Chamber Guardian, Warrior, Crawl Harpooner, also Warrior. So
Secret Squire now exploring for Numot, finding a Merfolk Branchwalker and getting the +1/+1 counter.
And likely putting that into the graveyard here. Seeker Squire sitting at a nice 2-mana 2/3. Kenji can opt to go for the block here to force Adver to use his entire turn to get a Growth Chamber Guardian, but opts to just take it here instead. By the way, Adver has 1/2 of the combo. He's got the status statue in hand with land number 4.
So now we just need to find a Goblin Chain Whirler on Adver's side. So Water Grave will come down next. Paying the 2 life for the Jadeite Ranger, which will explore twice. And if it doesn't find a land, it'll become a 4/3.
Yeah, and this is kind of interesting because Kenji really wants that Jadeite Ranger to be a 4/3. So as you can see, he chose to keep the Merfolk Branchwalker on top and then put it into the graveyard because he didn't actually want to draw it. But it's really important to have a 4-power creature against that Growth Chamber Guardian to offer that trade.
Rekindling Phoenix hits the board now, and this card is very, very difficult to get rid of.
Absolutely. Vraska's Contempt, one of the few answers in the Sultai mid-range deck. And you can kind of see this is sometimes the problem that you have when you play this mid-range deck. Kenji opted to play this mid-range deck, but is playing Negate's main deck to help shore up the control matchups. But as you can see here, not that effective against an all-creature deck. And again, this kind of highlights the issues of playing something like a mid-range deck in this format.
The Hydroid Krasis now able to block the Rekindling Phoenix if necessary, but won't be able to get rid of it. Another Rekindling Phoenix for Adver. Oh, the Air Force has been called in.
Yeah, Rekindling Phoenix, just a fantastic creature. And again, Kenji with just not a whole lot of answers here. He's kind of basically going to have to chump block quite soon with those Hydroid Craces. The only thing I can see him do here is probably just run out of 3/3 Craces, try to draw some cards. But
I think so too, just gain a life, I believe.
Right.
So 1 life rounded up, And just to, oh, there's another Hydro Crisis. So, you know, they can trade, but the nature of their Kindling Phoenix is it does come back at the beginning of the next turn. Unless the egg is dealt with. But, I don't know if Kenji has any ways to do that, to get rid of that elemental token.
Right. And now Adver also, keep in mind, we talk about the interaction with Status and Goblin Chain Roller, but Statue also, you know, relatively inefficient, but you can still use it as a removal spell if you have access to both black and green mana. And currently, with the Stomping Ground and the Blood Crypt in play, Adver has the ability to cast Statue to remove one of Kenji's creatures.
All right, so the Hydroid Crasis going down to the Rekindling Phoenix.
Oh, and look at this.
Buff as well.
We're going to see a spectacled Rixmati Reveler here.
Here we go.
Drawing Adver the full 3 cards with no cards discarded here. And look at that, more gas in the tank for Adver here with that Growth Chamber Guardian, Reveler, and Phoenix.
But a pretty good draw there from Nummy, getting the Wild Growth Walker and having the Merfolk Branch Walker just to gain him a little bit of life. Just to try and stop this onslaught from these Rekindling Phoenix.
So that's the type of combination that would be really good against the straight up mono red aggressive deck. But this is a little more mid-rangey. This plays creatures that are a lot bigger, and as you can see, there's a bunch of flyers out there as well. So, you know, Kenji really needs to find answers to these Rekindling Phoenixes. Gaining a few life points off the Wild Growth Walker is not going to get it done here.
No, but the Jadeite Ranger will get him 6 extra life just to try and help him stabilize to find an answer in the deck. Still not presenting any attacks. It's a bit of a stalemate here, at least on the ground. But in the air, the Rekindling Phoenixes are owning it.
Yeah, Kenji does have a few ground creatures, and he does have the ability to block with a few of them. So he's just trying to find reasonable attacks where he can. But again, Adver did have that Crawl Harpooner to cleanly trade with Jadeite Ranger.
Yep. So now on the other side of the board, we've got the Gruul Spellbreaker, another Rekindling Phoenix. There are just going to be pigeons aplenty in the skies for Adver.
Oh yeah, you better
Hydroid
believe
Crisis
number 3 is going to be coming down this turn.
Definitely. Spectacle going off again. Here comes the 3rd Rekindling Phoenix. Jadeite Ranger will buy Kenji some time, but he's got to find answers, and he's got to find them quick. Perhaps a land off the top would be better for him, just to get a bigger Hydroid Crasis. But, yeah, a 5/5 would be ideal. Ooh.
So Finality, while it would do a pretty good job of being able to clear the board, unfortunately, these Rekindling Phoenixes, as you can see, when they die, they create 0/1 elemental tokens and have the ability, at the beginning of your upkeep, sack the token to return Rekindling Phoenixes from your graveyard to the battlefield. So despite Kenji casting Finality and removing the board temporarily, all 3 of those Phoenixes will come back.
He can use the find half of the card to get back the Hydroid Craces, which have entered the graveyard, but deciding to bin that as well. Getting the 6 life. Hanging on to that Hydroid Crasis for the time being. He will go down to 1 life.
Right.
If
However,
he's not careful.
Kenji next turn, if he does draw a land, he can play a 5/5 Hydroid Crasis. If he can somehow string those together and make it so that his flyers are just bigger than those Phoenixes, that might give him a chance. But there's just too much pressure now. Kenji is sitting at 1 life. I don't think there's a single card in the deck that will get Kenji back into this.
I don't think so either. So let's see how this plays out. The Hydroid Crasis can gain him a little bit of life and block one of the Phoenixes, but is that enough, Paul? Vraska's Contempt. That's a consideration. Gains you some life, gets rid of the pesky bird that keeps coming back. But I don't know if that will do it. I don't think so.
That was too little too late. That's the type of effect that Kenji needed to find earlier on in the match. But
Kenji knows it. Concedes before the lethal Air Force attack. And take his life total down. So we're going to go to game 3. What do you think the players are going to bring here? Do you think the Sultai is the correct choice in this format?
You know what? Honestly, I don't know if Kenji wants to bring the Sultai deck because he really tuned this Sultai deck to be favorable against the control decks.
Yeah.
You see the 3 copies of main deck negate, but those are somewhat effective, but still not great against the red decks, especially the Jund Warriors decks that plays mostly all creatures. And given that there's a chance that Adver could bring Jund Warriors for the next round, I would look to avoid to probably play the Explorer deck and just cross my fingers, play the mono white deck, and you know he already proved that you can still beat mono red with this white aggressive deck. So I would guess that Kenji's going to go for mono white here. Meanwhile, on Adver's side, it's actually quite interesting. The Jund Warriors deck is a little bit slower, so it might actually fall really far behind. But it does have that really powerful interaction of Chain Whirler with status that could easily clear Kenji's board, even if he chooses to play around the Goblin Chain Whirler by you know playing a bunch of 2-toughness creatures or making a big Convoke with the Venerated Luxon. So actually it's a lot more interesting from Adver's side. Also, just the Jund Warriors deck is not really you know one of the more popular decks that you see. So you know it's unclear what Adver feels like is the better matchup here, because if I'm on Adver's side, I would expect Kenji to probably bring mono white in this last round.
So Adver is locked and loaded, ready to get underway. Kenji just taking another look at the decks and deciding now what we're going to rock and roll with in the 3rd round. Here we go, friends. What is it? Let's see what Numot has picked. Take a look at the opening hands here. The Jund opener, pretty good. All the colors you need. And the Sultai. So we are getting a rematch, in essence, of game number 2.
Yeah, Kenji now on the play here, and he goes, you know what? You're not going to draw the Phoenixes this time. I'm going to get you. I'm going to prove to the world that Sultai Explorer is legit in best of 1. Let's do this.
I have an implacable Death Lizard in the Carnage Tyrant. You cannot stop me. Right, let's see.
I know it's correct to put the Vraska's Contempt in the graveyard because Kenji really needs to find lands, but he could have also, you know, be suffering from, you know, the trauma that was created from the last game.
Missing out on that card that I now need to kill a pigeon. Right, let's see. So Mythic Branchwalker digging through the deck, finding a Hydrate Krasis. That's going to go in the bin as well. He really needs to find some more land to try and get. You don't want to miss a land drop in this. I think that'll be the undoing of quite a few decks.
Kenji definitely needs a land this turn. Okay, well, Jadelight Ranger, extremely likely to find a land as you get to explore twice. That's going to go into the graveyard. Oh no, he really needed to find a land here because you just cannot afford to miss land drops here.
But luckily the Jadelight Ranger...
Oh, the combo! He's got the combo!
Oh, he does.
Is he going to do it?
Wait, let's see.
Oh, no. Not yet. You got to wait.
Rekindling Phoenix.
Play the Phoenix first.
I will brace myself for the Goblin Chain Whirler Stated Statue combo, people. It's going to happen, I believe. All right, back to Numot. Applying pressure. Getting in for the 4 damage with the Jadelight Ranger, Woodland Cemetery down, and Vraska Golgari Queen.
Oh, and this is going to be just one of the best Chain Whirlers ever. Look at this. This Chain Whirler is going to be completely savage here.
Oh, no.
If Adver plays Chain Whirler and then casts status targeting the Chain Whirler, he will wipe out Kenji's board and get that Vraska Golgari Queen off the battlefield as well.
But the bird looks like it will just dispatch of Vraska.
I won't forgive this.
I think he might be holding on to it.
Yeah, it looks like he's gonna just wait to just be a little more grindy here and just run out the other creatures that he has.
He obviously doesn't know about the Carnage Tyrant, but because the Carnage Tyrant is hexproof, that is only one of the ways that he can get rid of that big dino in Numot's hand.
Yeah, and Kenji desperately needs to find lands here, so he's gonna use this find here to get the Explorer creatures that he put into his graveyard.
Applying pressure still, he is the beatdown. I think the Growth Chamber Guardian may block. There we go, may block that. Getting in for another 4 damage. He is racing now.
And look at this, Adver actually at 6 life here.
Yeah.
That's one of the costs of playing a 3-color deck in the format. You have to play a lot of those shock lands, and he's taking a lot of damage from his lands. So, you know, at some point he might have to go with this Goblin Chain Whirler strategy just to clear up the board so he can get the tempo back on his side.
Mythic Branchwalker now finding what? There we go. There's a land off the top for Kenji. Looks to be a little bit relieved at seeing that. And now Adver has a contemplation. Does he want to Chain Whirl now, or does he just want to keep getting as many creatures on his board as possible? He is able to play the Gruul Spellbreaker as well as a Growth Chamber Guardian or Growth Chamber and then find the friend from the library.
So This is a much trickier situation now for Adver because Kenji now has 5 mana in play, which means you're 1 mana away from actually casting Finality. So it might be in Adver's best interest to remove the creatures on the battlefield so there's no good target for the Finality. For example, if Kenji uses Finality on Jade Light Ranger, he's going to have a creature that survives and also remove all the creatures on Adver's side of the battlefield. So Kenji really needed to find a land there, but he didn't quite get there.
He does have a Murloc Branchwalker who can hopefully find him one off the top. There's considerations now here. Vivian Reed can deal with the Rekindling Phoenix 1 turn, but it will keep coming back.
Right, so Kenji can use the Vivian Reed to get that Rekindling Phoenix off the battlefield, but on Adver's upkeep, it's just going to come back. So I don't think that's an option. I think he's just going to go for a 3/3 Krasis here, gain 1 life, draw a card, and present a blocker to that Rekindling Phoenix.
All right, there's the other land for Kenji. No attacks.
Is he going to do it now?
Oh.
Okay, it's time. Trigger on the stack. Goblin Chain Whirler into status.
Oh.
This is going to remove the entire board on Kenji's side. And look at this attack, an attack for 12. Kenji's now down to 4 life.
Oh,
Even if Kenji casts a Finality, that Rekindling Phoenix will be lethal.
What a play. That is what I was hoping to see. That Chain Whirler status statue combo, absolutely insane.
Kenji shocking.
Good
Shocking
game.
there. Kenji giving out the good game here because he is dead on board to that Rekindling Phoenix. Wow.
What a play. What a play. Excellent game. Gentlemen, congratulations to Adver.
And I mean, just the patience that Adver showed there. He goes, you know what? I am not going to commit to this combination until I am confident that I can set up enough of a board where I can kill you in 2 turns. So instead of firing off that combination that he could have done earlier, and I'm not going to lie, I might have been tempted to do it at an earlier point in the game, he went ahead, played those Growth Chamber Guardians, made sure he had enough power on the battlefield, then played it when Kenji didn't have mana up so that he could actually just go for the complete blowout there.
That was great. Exercising patience, you can just imagine him going, hold, hold. Okay, now. Everything dead. Excellent, excellent games there. Great to see 4 different decks being represented, 3 of them that aren't very popular in terms of deck submissions for this. So yeah, it's just great to see a variety. Great to see the Jund Warriors do what they were built to do as well.
Yeah, and you really got to see kind of, I'm going to say, you know, there's downsides and upsides. You got to see the true upside of kind of stretching your mana base to the limits to kind of play the most powerful interactions in the format. Not only did you get to, of course, play Goblin Chain Whirler, but you also got to see a spectacled Rix Mighty Reveler getting Adver 3 cards. Then you got to see Goblin Chain Whirler with Status Statue obliterating all the creatures on Kenji's side of the battlefield.
It's crazy. And again, the Rekindling Phoenix proving to be the MVP in that matchup, just not able to get rid of it and swinging in for lethal in the end.
Yeah,
there.
just a super sticky threat, really hard to deal with. Traditional spot removal is not very effective against a card like Rekindling Phoenix. You need removal in the form of exile removal to be able to deal with this. So cards like Vraska's Contempt, those are the things that you needed. Another thing that Kenji could have tried to do, he never quite got there because he never quite drew enough lands, is get to a point where you can maybe run out 5/5 Hydroid Krasis to block. But again, never got to that point, and those Phoenixes were just way too difficult for Kenji to deal with.
So excellent games all around. Congratulations. Kenji will now be fighting for his life in the lower bracket of Group D. And Adver advances, so 2 more games. If he can win them, he is done for the day into top 16. So let's see if he can do that.
Yeah, it's truly great to actually see just, you know, players bringing something a little bit different to the table. Because, you know, we've seen a lot of the, of course, kind of the top tier decks of the format. We've seen mono white aggro, mono red aggro, and Esper Control. I want to say those are kind of the big 3 going in. And to have just, you know, a matchup where we actually kind of saw 3 more unique decks represented here. It was just nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, Sultai Explorer is no stranger to the Magic world.
Right.
We all know it's very strong, but as you mentioned, it's not super strong in best of 1 format. It relies on its sideboard. It relies on knowing what it's fighting in order to be at its peak.
Right, and this is precisely what you see when you play this specific format, this new duo standard format where, you know, you're really incentivized to play kind of slightly more linear strategies. You have, of course, the aggressive decks that you can bring, or on the other end of the spectrum, pure control, or if you want to go even over the top of that, we saw Yellow Hat play Teamer Reclamation to beat all the control decks.
Yeah.
So it looks like that's kind of where you want to be, and, you know, running something like a mid-range deck, again, you just have the wrong half of your deck that you can draw in specific matchups that just makes it really awkward for you, and you can't, you know, have access to all those powerful sideboard cards because you're only playing best of one. And so that's why I think a lot of people shied away from playing, you know, stuff like Golgari Explorer or Sultai Explorer.
All right. I do believe we are ready to hear from Adver, so let's throw it over to Becca for the winner's interview.